So that's why it's so important to have an open lines of communication with your children, is so that they can feel comfortable in coming and telling you or reporting to you odd behavior or weird behavior with the guy next door or the gal next door or the person living with you. It's really important to keep those lines of communication open.
In the last episode of the Perspective Project, I spoke with Detective Renick, who shared about her experiences as a detective with the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force, and she shared some insight for parents on how to keep your kids safe while online. If you haven't seen that video yet, you can find a link to episode 6 in the video description down below. In this episode, Detective Renick answers some of the questions we received from viewers after my original interview with her. I was really glad that the timing worked out to be able to sit down with Detective Renick again for this Q&A session, because after 28 years with BPD, next week, Detective Renick is going to be retiring from our department, but continuing her work with the Department of Homeland Security's Investigation Unit, which is part of the ICAC task force. Detective Renick will definitely be missed around BPD, but I'm really thankful for the work she's done to develop the Internet Crimes Against Children detective position at our department, and I'm glad she'll still be a resource for us here in Whatcom County. Here's Detective Renick answering some of your questions. If there's a sealed envelope containing account credentials, such as username and password combinations, how do those get updated when a password changes or expires?
Well, as we all know, passwords and usernames change and expire, and a lot of them change or expire within a 90-day period. So that's the time, again, when you just take that envelope, you open it up in the presence of the child, you change the usernames and the passwords as the agreement reads in the contract, and then you reseal the envelope and put it back up where you need it to be.
There was an article going around on Facebook about a woman who went undercover as a child, 11 or 13-year-old, I believe, on Instagram. I forgot who she worked with, but the goal was to catch predators. Within minutes of posting a selfie, she had grown men contacting her and sending explicit pics of themselves and asking for revealing photos. Does this stuff really happen?
It really does happen, yes. And I want to be careful on this topic, because what I don't want to have happen is for people to just go post things at will, trying to catch predators, because you need to stay in your lane of your own profession. So that would be like me volunteering to cut your hair and end up with a really bad haircut, because I guarantee you that would happen. So my advice would be, make sure that you leave this to the professionals, because what we don't want to have happen is we don't want to have bad precedents set, we don't want to have bad case law set, and we don't want to, we want to stay away from a dangerous situation. So leave it to the people who have been trained to do it and know what they're doing.
Would it be fair to just warn or caution parents, though, if they have a young teen posting pictures on Instagram, that quite likely people could be soliciting them easily, especially if their profile's open?
Absolutely, yes. And it does happen, and we get those reports quite often.
Since a predator could be anybody, and with the housing situation the way it is in town, are there procedures to ensure your roommates or community members that you are not one, and also be sure that they are not one? So I'm assuming when they say one, they mean a predator.
Be who you are. And if a person is a predator, that is going to eventually come out. I really feel strongly about that, because predators have characteristics and behavior that sometimes they can't get rid of. And so I don't think there's a way to guarantee anybody that you're not a predator or that your roommate's not a predator. I don't think there's any guarantee there. And I'll take you back to the original filming where I said that I made the slide for the class, because one of the questions that continuously came up was, you didn't tell me how to spot them. That's the point. You can't spot them. So that's why it's so important to have an open lines of communication with your children, is so that they can feel comfortable in coming and telling you or reporting to you odd behavior or weird behavior with the guy next door or the gal next door or the person living with you. It's really important to keep those lines of communication open.
Are online predators also likely to victimize kids?
Yes, they are. And again, that's the point of the program. And when I say the program, I'm talking about internet crimes against children. So one of the things that we look at is some research that was done called the Butner study, and it was done in Butner Federal Prison. And when the study took place, there were actually two of them, one in 2000 and one in 2008. So I'm going to talk about the one in 2008. And the one in 2008 involved 155 sex offenders. And they were put into an 18-month intensive therapy program, and they had to reach certain agreements when they were doing it. So of these predators, they were only sentenced for possession, distribution, and or receipt of child pornography, and I'm talking images and or videos. So as they progressed through the treatment program, the number of victims that were disclosed prior to the treatment program was 75. By the end of the 18-month intense therapy program, there were 1,777 live victims reported, which averaged out to about 13.5 victims per predator. So when you think about that, you're just talking about people who have never been caught. And this can go back to very early childhood for them when they start actually offending against other kids.
How successful have internet crimes against children been? We have helped X kids who need Y resources. We have stopped Z predators from continuing.
Between the Bellingham Police Department, Whatcom County Sheriff's Office, some of the smaller outlying agencies, and Homeland Security Investigations, Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force here in Whatcom County, I would estimate since about 2014 we've arrested and or gotten sentences on over 100 predators within Whatcom and a few in Skagit County, but primarily Whatcom County is what we focus on. When you think about that and you think about the number of live victims that have been included in the interviews of those predators, I can think of myself in two cases in particular where I started out with just images and videos that I was investigating, and I ended up with over 6 victims in each case. Now, when you talk about those victims, a lot of times they don't report until they're adults because they're either fearful or they don't think somebody's going to believe them, which I think was mentioned in one of the questions before. And that's why it's so important for that child to feel safe, whether it's with the parent, the caregiver, a teacher, a counselor. There are a number of resources within our community that can help that child. So once we identify the victims, yes, we get them into either a court-ordered counseling program, or Bridget Collins has a fantastic resource here in town that allows kids to come in and they can either be included in individual counseling or group therapy. But the bottom line is once we identify the kids, yes, we're not going to just let them exist. We're going to get them into the programs that they need to get into to get them the therapy and the help that they need.